Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And I actually have somebody that is really in this studio more than the only person. He definitely goes behind me. He's probably in here most. And actually this past year, we were connecting on a couple of different projects, always connected when it comes to Detroit politics. I met him years ago, actually with an initiative where we went from neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood. And that's when he was stepping in as a journalist and so many other thoughts. Malachi Barrett, how are you today?
Great. Good to be back. Thanks for having me on a Detroit is Different proper.
Yes. You've been around Detroit is Different stuff for a long time. But now we finally actually get to get that Detroit story from you and how that connects.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
All right. So you already know that we all start these with like your Detroit story, how many generations deep, how far back it goes. And I know a little bit of this, but your Detroit story, what's the ties? How did you connect with the D?
Yeah, so 0 generations back. Actually, nobody in my family is from Michigan at all.
Okay.
My mom grew up in Missouri in a small town called Carthage, which is kind of outside Joplin. If people know, there was a really big hurricane or a tornado, I guess, that came through in like 2012. That's probably the only reason people would know about Joplin.
That is a very small town if it's definitely bookmarked by a natural disaster that happened.
And my dad grew up in Wisconsin. He grew up in Green Bay.
Okay.
So we're Midwest people. We just kind of ended up in Michigan. My dad was in the Marines the whole time I was growing up, so we moved around a lot.
Okay.
I was born in California. We've lived in a couple of states and actually in Okinawa, Japan for a little bit, and settled down in Battle Creek. Spent some time there in elementary school. We went away to South Carolina, came back, and basically was there from like middle school all the way through high school. Went to school at CMU, met my now wife who grew up in Huntington Woods. So that's kind of what started to bring us over here.
Over this way.
I basically worked my way like east across the state. After I graduated school, I was in Kalamazoo for a little bit. Then I went to Lansing and covered some stuff up there and moved to Detroit in 2022.
All right. So I definitely got to already start off with a big question, especially like this season. So because he was born there, did that mean that you were in a Packer household as a child?
Yeah, I am a Packer fan, which I don't shy away from. You know, when it's Green Bay versus the Lions, I'm rooting for Green Bay.
Okay.
Although I've got a lot of love for the NFC North in general.
Okay.
And it's been cool seeing the Lions succeed the last couple of years. But if they're in the playoffs, sorry guys, I'm not on your side.
Okay.
My grandma still lives there. I mean, I got like legit some Green Bay connections, you know?
Okay. Is somebody like in your family, how they say like the city owns the team? Does like somebody in your family have like a, I figure they give like a, I don't know.
Yeah, I think my dad applied. My dad applied to be an owner or whatever, and I think we're like number 100,005 or something.
Okay,
on the
so
list,
so it may happen like 2 lifetimes from now. It's like,
probably.
your great-grandson may end up being an owner of the Packers.
Maybe, but also our kids may very well end up being Lions fans because my wife's a Lions fan, and it's going to be a source of contention.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, because I always wonder, it's like, what is going on with this? It sounds good, but it still feels like somebody really is managing it. But here nor there. So, moving around, military kid, and we've definitely seen other military kids. We've had the interviews. What is it like as far as like did you have, what would you consider like that place that when you think of like as a kid where it's like, okay, I like this place most? Was that Battle Creek or was it another place?
Yeah, I mean, I have vivid memories of being in Okinawa, Japan. It's kind of like the Hawaii of Japan. It's like a small island. It's part of the Ryukyu Island chain. And I don't know what the population is there, but it's kind of small. I mean, it's similar to like, you know, a lot of farmland. I think they grow like sugar canes there. And of course, we were on a military base while we were there. I was there I was pretty young. It was like 1st through 3rd grade.
Okay.
But, you know, we were like on the complete opposite side of the world. We came back, I think maybe once a year, if that, like around Christmas time. And it was like a series of flights. So we were just very like isolated, but also kind of within this like bubble of also, you know, fellow military kids. I remember our neighbors were, you know, this young one of my friends from that time. We kind of actually reconnected recently. We're from Puerto Rico, and the military is it's a diverse group. I mean, people from all different walks of life, probably generally like middle income people. There's this joke on The Simpsons I always like that like they were part of the upper lower middle class. And that's kind of how I felt like our situation was. But it was interesting because all the infrastructure over there was built to withstand typhoons, which are just like hurricanes, basically. And the first year we moved there was something called Super Typhoon Bart that was ripping through. And I just have this memory of, I think it was like probably my 7th birthday or something like that. And I had gotten a VHS tape of Jurassic Park. And so there's the scene where the T-Rex is kind of coming at him and it's like raining really hard. And I'm looking outside and there's cars being pushed like down the street from the wind.
So it's like you're looking at TV and it's like, okay, this is like happening simultaneously.
It was an interesting childhood. I mean, I always felt like, I don't know, unique, I guess, or I mean, honestly, I felt weird as a kid. It can be kind of an isolating experience, especially when we moved, into like regular schools and weren't like around other military kids. A lot of people like didn't really get it. But it was also like I wouldn't trade it for anything. I got to see a lot of different parts of the country.
Okay.
Got to meet a lot of people. I think the experience of like showing up somewhere new and having to introduce yourself to people has served me like really well. Especially here.
I definitely think the new kid, it's always, just the hurdles of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was always the new kid. Yeah always. Because we've moved every 3 years. So, sometimes most of the time, actually, we moved places where we weren't like living on a military base.
Okay.
So there was always kind of a culture.
So it's there. Even that too, because I know on-base culture is different than off-base culture from other interviews here, and just so many other families. But also, you talk about other kids like responding to and having the understanding because it's just so different,
Yeah, I remember we lived in Parris Island in South Carolina, which is one of the 2 places where they train the Marines. There's a base in San Diego, and then there's Parris Island. And if you have the choice, which I don't think people do, I think it's based on like what side of the state you're from. It used to be like what side of the Mississippi you're on. If you're on the west, you go to San Diego. If you're on the east, you go to Parris Island. Long story short, try to go to San Diego because Parris Island is a man-made island in the middle of the swamp.
Wow.
And we lived on the island. We were across the street from one of the tracks where recruits would be doing their thing every morning. So we kind of woke up with a similar like routine of like you'd
cadence and you're hearing people training.
And it was like kind of a normal neighborhood experience where like the kids were all the same age. We would all hang out and run around and, try not to get in trouble. But the only difference was if you like broke somebody's window, it wouldn't be like the mean old man down the street. It'd be like a general or like a colonel or something. And you would be like in real, So I don't know. In some ways it was like kind of typical. And in other ways it was like really weird.
Very different.
Yeah.
Very different. Actually, connecting in that, a recent Detroit is different. I know they were like, is this paid ad? I'm like, nah, but Toys for Tots. That's a Marine program. I didn't even know this. Disney reached out. They did something in Detroit. So I met the colonel over that. So
we did that a couple of years.
I'm thinking that's what I was going to ask.
Battle Creek. Yeah, we would. I remember we would hand out Thanksgiving turkeys, and then there were a couple times where we actually went and like picked out toys for people. And I was like probably in elementary school when we did that too.
Yep, because I had no idea the connection, but he told the whole story of how it happened and Walt Disney connecting. And this is the only nonprofit organization from the military that's not funded by the military. And I was like, okay, this is a whole to-do. I had no idea that Marines are, this is an official mission of the Marines. You know what I'm saying? So definitely like connecting in community and where things go from, what did he say? He was like, after World War II, a lot of the soldiers didn't come back. So you had a lot of, children that did not have fathers and what would be at that time, World War II era, making sure that some toys still get executed,
Yeah.
So also with that, Battle Creek,
Cereal City.
That's exactly what people think. But along with that, it's like Battle Creek is. We had a project with the round table this year, And it's like I have a homie, Big E. Shout out to Big E. He was like, man, he'd tell like these like gangster stories from Battle Creek. I'm like, Battle Creek is like, and then it's like, okay, it's definitely as I always say, it's many economies that sometimes exist in a lot of places in the state of Michigan, and kind of like as that crossing point, Chicago to Detroit, and it lands a lot of personalities in Battle Creek. Let's put it like that.
I mean, I look at it, I wish I could remember like what the population of it was, but I always look at it kind of like as like a Saginaw or Bay City equivalent. It's like a post-industrial town. It's like a lot of small towns in Michigan that don't really make a lot of sense anymore because like the primary industry left. Ours was like cereal manufacturing, and there's been some news on that recently. A lot of those jobs are just no longer there. It has a lot of like interesting history though. It was a stop along the Underground Railroad. Sojourner Truth ended up spending the later part of her life there, and so there was like a big
it's a big
community.
statue. Yeah, it's a whole statue and like almost like a mall, not like a shopping mall, but like a mall plaza.
Yeah, like a park with a lot of different. It's actually really. I mean, if you're on your way to Chicago and you have some time to spare, hop off 94 and go down. It's like right off the highway. It wouldn't be really out of your way. But there's a lot of like cool cultural things like that we get to learn about growing up. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of an unremarkable town, like a lot of places. There definitely, there were 2 high schools. There was kind of the more like inner city Battle Creek, high school, and then there was like the more, I guess, suburban, if you could really call it that, high school. And I went to the latter of that, but it was probably like, I don't know, 70% like white when I was there. We had a big population of people from Burma that were coming over when I was growing up. So I don't know. Battle Creek's an interesting place. We call ourselves Battle Creatures as a term of endearment and derision. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on there, but I got love for it. Anybody from Battle Creek, I'm not trying to diss it.
I never spent more time in Battle Creek than this year of my life, and found out a lot of different things, even like the faith-based community, the relationships, and also, and I guess this can kind of mirror a little bit of Detroit. A lot of people doing organizing, not necessarily saying what do they call it? Like the nonprofit industrial complex. I guess like anything can be an industrial complex, but because Kellogg, the foundation, is such a large entity, it's created, sometimes you would think more bonds and connections would be shared amongst a lot of these organizations, similar missions, but not necessarily getting there. So I'm not looking at Battle Creek as the only location where that happens, because it definitely happens here in the city of Detroit too, and many places just across the nation itself.
The role of that philanthropy is interesting because the Kellogg Foundation has done a lot to not only like support education initiatives in Battle Creek High School and that school system, which is like the more inner city like school that I mentioned. But also they've put money into like economic development initiatives in downtown, and they've got some like breweries to come start up. But then you think of like compared to Kalamazoo, which basically like 3 of the wealthiest people in the country have subsidized not only like the Kalamazoo Promise, but also like portions of the city budget to replace a tax cut. When I was living there, that was one of the big things that happened. They created this like foundation that basically took on different roles of the city government itself. There's these like little places in Michigan where like if you happen to have the hometown connection to some extremely wealthy person, then they prop up a lot of programs. And I don't know. I mean, Battle Creek has some of that, but also I think it kind of struggles because again, it's like, I don't know what the main industry, and to be honest, like I wanted to get out of there as much as I could. I think a lot of people probably have that experience with their hometowns, especially from like smaller parts of the city or parts of the country. I was like, I got to get out of here. But I didn't really go that far. At the end of the day, after college, I went to Kalamazoo, which was like 30 minutes away. And I kind of had this moment. I was like, man, I graduated with a degree. I could have gone maybe anywhere in the country, and I ended up so close to home. Like, why was that? I wonder.
I think life sometimes happens like that. And as you talk about Kalamazoo, check the archives of Detroit is Different. Great interview with Dr. West, Tamara West, and a lot of the work that she does, just opening up and sharing so much about some of the relationships with the philanthropy in that location, and that even creates, um, I don't want to say like a caste system, but it builds different types of relationships that start happening depending upon how close you are to the resources, and that kind of plays out with a lot of things in life. Period. Even when we think of, I call it Big Ten country, like all these places just from my truck driving days, but like Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, like Big Ten country, and then Pennsylvania. It's a it, we think of really with the like that documentary or series from history. It's like the men who built America, but like just like the Carnegies, Henry Ford, Van Buren and all of that, and like what was a reality at one point in time, and even like those materials as things have shifted, it still leaves the impacts of like so much of the design of so many infrastructures are so built around industry and like getting back to work within the industry, like.
Yeah, I mean the Kellogg brothers were kind of like that too. They probably are what put Battle Creek on the map in the first place. One of them was the serial brother who like wanted to start the business, and the other one was this hyper religious. I can't remember like what sect of like Christianity he was really into, and he was also this like dietary scientist and weird guy. There's a book that I read a couple years ago. I think it was called like the Kellogg Brothers, that gets into their whole dynamic. They ended up hating each other. The one of the brothers was like super racist too, and like hosted this like skull science summit in Battle Creek. So I was like shocked to hear that. But this was like in the 1920s, so that was the time that kind of thing was.
You talk about the era in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, as even as we're talking about this, I think like towards the end of this month, like everything is going to be released in like more of these Epstein files, and 40 years from now, people will be like, "Man, can you believe that every president was hanging with this guy?" And it's like, yeah, kind of can,
Yeah.
The more, what is it like, truth is more stranger than fiction. It's many things that come to light, and even those relationships, because so much of industry to continue involved bringing in so many bodies from different places, black and even whiteness itself. As I always say, it's like it's so unique because it has iterations of what becomes that, but it never was always accepted. Definitely like in that, in the 1920s.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constructed identity. I mean, it's interesting too how what I kind of took away from reading that book was like the scientific, the pseudo-scientific justification for white supremacy, basically, has always been a thing.
Yeah.
And obviously way before the 1920s, right? Like obviously. But like we're dealing with this now, like this scientific justification for these, ridiculous ideas, like continues to be a very lucrative thing for the people that can draw those connections, I guess.
A lot of, phrenology, I think it really probably a more modern popular culture.
You go on Twitter and that kind of stuff is coming back.
Oh,
though,
yeah.
and it's
very much so. Yeah. But I was going to say, the scene, Leonardo DiCaprio in Django, when he's explaining like a lot of and that's in a lot of the roots of a lot of this are like the roots that lead to psychology, like many of the social sciences. So like, and it's just definitely, you got to take this stuff in, have an understanding for then, have an understanding for now, and then just the arcs of like what people will go through to just try to prove that like, no, this is, this makes sense. And
it just reemphasizes how it wasn't that long ago. Like 100 years ago sounds like a long time ago, but what is it? 2-3 generations, people's grandparents, great, you know what I mean? Like this stuff is still very present. So
definitely. So Keizu, when you were, now I guess I got to get into like, people know you as like journalism. Like, were you always like the kid that was reading a whole lot? Did you like write great reports? What was it that led you into like, I'm thinking journalism could be something that I want to get into?
Yeah, I wasn't really sure like what I wanted to do. I mean, I thought I was like a pretty good student.
Okay.
Shout out to my mom. She was a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 younger brothers, so like her whole project was like making sure we didn't all grow up to be.
You were the oldest?
I was the oldest.
I should have been asked that question too. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the
people can probably identify like the older brother energy. Yeah.
What's the difference in age gaps? Like, are 2-3 years younger? What is it?
Yeah, 3 years and then 5 and then 10 is the youngest one's 10 years younger than me.
Okay, so he's really little. It's like, okay.
Well, yeah. So I remember like when they were born and like helping take care of them and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But my mom had us reading. I was reading it at like 3 years old. She says, I don't know if that's true. That's what my mom says.
Okay.
And I, so I was always, encouraged to read a lot. And she remembers like me, trying to like have conversations with like adults. I mean, my dad was gone a lot growing up. Being in the military.
Yeah.
He was deployed a couple times, to Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was in Somalia before that. And, we just go on training exercises for like a month or 2 at a time sometimes. So I spent a lot of time with her, and she definitely like really put a lot into my development. She had a childhood development degree and actually ran a daycare for a little bit when we lived in Wisconsin.
So it was almost like you had like an expert. Your mama is a mama, which is always great, but also she actually had like it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna really apply all of this theory right into Malachi.
Yeah, totally. And really encouraged me to read. I remember reading like the Marine Corps has like a reading list for its officers. And so there was a lot of sci-fi books on there that I grew up like Starship Troopers and Ender's Game and things like that. And my dad is also a big time reader. He likes those like historical fiction books and like Pixar and stuff like that. So we just were always like surrounded by books. And I don't know, for a while I thought maybe I would want to be a writer, but I didn't know exactly what that means. Like I don't really want to write fiction. I wasn't really into the arts, because I was kind of a jock in school too. So like, I was like, I'm not going to write poetry or something like that, which like now I kind of wish I would have spent more time like pursuing some creative writing. There's still time, I guess. But I think the thing that really attracted me to journalism more than anything is the independence and the ability to try to hold people accountable and try to push back on power. And I think maybe it was like being a military brat a little bit. I got kind of like an anti-authority streak in me, or like a don't tell me what to do streak. And that seemed like a nice way to kind of merge, this kind of like punkier attitude I had as like a brat kid with like being more literary minded. I didn't know what I wanted to do until really my senior year of high school. I spent a semester on the yearbook club just kind of as a lark. I was like, I had some friends who were doing it. I was like, yeah, this will be fun.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of interested in this. And then I went to CMU on a tour, and they had a really good journalism program and a student newspaper. And I just kind of decided, yeah, I'll give this a shot. It seems like better. And, I was fortunate. My parents had both gone to college. And so there was never really a question of like whether I would be able to go. I was able to take advantage of some of the GI Bill to get part of my school paid for as well. So that was extremely helpful. And I worked at the student newspaper while I was at CMU.
And now, like, even like with, shout out to Sam, but the Sam Robinson interview that I had talking about like the college newspaper, and also Jessica Kier Moore or what she was doing at the college newspaper. It's a good start of a lot of the arcs. Even this summer, it was an intern that was working with BridgeDetroit that came along for some of the recordings that we did, and he was talking about what they're doing at the student newspaper. What was the beat? How did you just like, I guess, get into like what you wanted to write? What was that first story that it was like, no, I kind of like this?
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, I remember the first year that I was at school, I was basically going up to the office. There was the student newspaper at CMU is independent, so it's funded by, they have an advertising department. It's like really the best way to get hands-on experience with anything. Like I definitely learned more working at, it's called Central Michigan Life, than I did, in any of my classes. No disrespect for the professors, but just that hands-on work and making mistakes and like, making all these decisions, because it was totally student operated. We had a advisor, shout out to Dave Clark, who's now the editor over at the Midland Daily News, Big Rapids Press, I think. He was really influential in a lot of kind of my like generation of reporters in Michigan. And basically everybody that I know that's a reporter spent time at their student newspapers. But I was just going up there like every week to the fourth floor of Moore Hall, like knocking on the door, just being like, "Hey, can you hire me? I'll do like literally anything you guys want me to do." And so I started out on sports.
Okay.
And I started out, I think, with women's softball, and then I covered wrestling, and moved over to the news desks and did some reporting about. Man, I wish I could remember like what were some of my like early stories. I mean, I ended up being an editor, and I ended up being editor in chief by the time I graduated.
Wow.
And led this, reformatting of the paper from, a broadsheet to a tabloid, and tried to update our social media and like video strategy, and was like in charge of, I don't know, probably like 24 or so people. And we were paid not very well. I always had to like take extra jobs and sell plasma actually.
That's
to afford.
Plasma centers is always boy.
Yeah. BioLife was definitely getting the best out of me at that time. But yeah, I mean, that experience, we did all kinds of stories. I mean, we thought we were probably like getting more in the weeds. I mean, we probably thought we were like holding people really accountable. I remember we did one of the bigger things that I did was like accounting all of the salaries of the staff. So the president and all of the administrative positions and how much money, and, drawing that direct connection to like, this is why school is so expensive, because we're paying university presidents are making crazy money.
That is definitely an independent paper.
Their contract. Yeah. And that was great. I mean, that having the experience of like having the communications director for the university call me up.
Yeah.
And, I'm probably like sleeping off a hangover or something like that, like trying to be a student and a reporter and, a young person, and is like, 21-year-old, and trying to figure out how to navigate that. Yeah, we did some stories about sexual assault on campus that were really influential. It was really how I learned how to use the Freedom of Information Act.
Okay.
One of my colleagues had tried to get data on where rapes on campus had happened, and the university had invoked Title IX, I think, to try to prevent that. But we were like, it's important that students know where these things are happening for, a variety of reasons. So yeah, stories like that. I mean, I don't know. What was the big smoking gun thing? That was a long time. It's been 10 years now since I've been in college. So I have to go back and probably read some of that stuff.
Look at what it was.
Yeah.
But from there, when you're doing that, like especially in the senior year, does it crystallize like, journalism that's where I want to go?
Yeah, I'd pretty much made up my mind like when I first enrolled at CMU that's what I was going to do, and I was going to try to make it work. Okay. And I did a couple internships while I was at school too, at like small papers in Mount Pleasant. I worked at a paper in St. Louis, Michigan, in Alma. Went up one summer I spent in Petoskey. That was actually a really great experience because they had you work at the Petoskey News Review, the Charlevoix Courier, and the Gaylord Herald Times. And so you would kind of drive around throughout the week. You'd work a day over here, a day over there, a day over there. So I get to know different parts of the state really well. I mean, my perspective was like, I will just do whatever I can to build up experience. Wherever, I'm not gonna, and I didn't like have intentions of going to like DC or New York or LA or anything like that either. I was like, I want to be a local reporter. I'm gonna, kind of put on my hard hat, I guess, and just try to carve out whatever. And I just like kind of built up, experience in that way, and built up connections throughout the state. And I think that's worked out really well. I mean, I feel like when you have like, you're starting to like set roots down, like putting that investment in a place like really pays off. At least it did for me, because there were different points where I'm like, what am I doing in Michigan? Everybody in my generation, there's population councils at the state right now because young people are leaving Michigan. People get their degree.
Very, very much so.
Right. So I don't know. That was always kind of a pressure. Like, does it make sense for me really to stay here? But I really love the state, and I wanted to contribute something positive to it. And, being able to move around has, I think, been really helpful for like my perspective of like, what's normal in Michigan government. And I don't know.
And then, and like I say, my lens is just through deliveries. So like, I mean, I may sleep overnight, but, the title of this, Detroit is different. I wouldn't necessarily say that about Michigan per se, but it's depending upon where you're at in the state, it's definitely like it can be like a Detroit versus everybody, or everybody feeling like they're versus Detroit. And um it's it's like, even like Grand Rapids is a large city, but it like the feel is different, and you really don't get it until you like are like in that place for a while, interact with some of the people, and what it feels like. In um, Michigan, I like as I traveled, like first it's a huge state. That's one thing. The second thing is some of the realities for other people throughout the state, even their relationship to water. And where Detroit is right there on the river, but it's completely different in other places because of their relationship to water and economies and other stuff. Like it, it's what people start paying attention to. You're like, okay, didn't even think that is something that comes to life for me.
Yeah, I mean, so my parents live pretty close to the Kalamazoo River, in kind of more eastern part of Battle Creek, and we were like right up the road from the river when Enbridge had, the most expensive oil spill in American history. And I remember I used to jump in the river after football practice in the summer, and just we witnessed like the ecological disaster that was. And thankfully it's been, cleaned up well, but a lot of people had to, sell their homes. It didn't affect our drinking water, thankfully, but, the smell of it was like really noxious in the summer. I remember like you couldn't really go outside for a while after it had first happened. And then, so, that experience with the Enbridge kind of colors later on when, this debate over the pipeline through the Straits of Mackinac is happening. Like I've got some, kind of personal experience with that. And then when I was in college, the Flint water crisis was happening, and the House Speaker at the time, Kevin Cotter, was from Michigan, or I'm sorry, from Mount Pleasant. So we had kind of Mount Pleasant's where CMU is located. So we got, some access to him. I think he might have even been like a CMU grad, and we were down there for one of Rick Snyder's State of the State addresses when, a lot of that protest activity was like really kicking up, and we were down trying to do like student reporting on what the impact of like kids in Flint was, because there was a pretty sizable population of CMU students that were from Flint. So we spent some time going there to do some reporting on how's that affecting like CMU students who are dealing with this back home, and then they have to like focus on their grades and everything. So I don't know, all this stuff is like really connected, and Michigan's definitely a big state, but it's like, geographically big, but the things that happen here have huge implications for like everywhere else.
So. I mean, even to, like politically, like when I talk to the national people, they're like, that's one of those battleground states. So it's like the politically shifts in Michigan, a lot of national people pay a lot of attention on what's happening. And I definitely know getting into like this midterm election, it's going to be a lot of attention paid to what's happening politically in Michigan.
Yeah. I covered the 2020 election for MLive. I was like the lead reporter on that campaign. So I was traveling over the state. That was when I lived in Lansing. And, the pandemic happened. But there was, for the first part of that campaign, there actually were rallies and things to go to. So we were driving around a lot. I came down to Detroit probably once or twice a week. And I had a little bit of experience with that, the city before that. I mean, growing up, like we got a lot of negative media perception. Like our local newspaper, the Battle Creek Inquirer, was a Gannett paper, so we would get some free press reporting. But I graduated from high school in 2012, so growing up, it was a lot of like recession news and bankruptcy news, and it was like I was being fed a lot of like negative images of the city. And one of the first times we'd come down for like, Tigers games and stuff like that. But when I started dating my wife, her father's like really has some deep roots in the city. He grew up in Saginaw, but was a pretty well-known musician over here. His name's Stuart Frankie. Unfortunately, we lost him this year.
Condolences.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a tough year, but he played a lot of like Dally in the Alley and Arts Beats and Eats, and he actually recorded a song with the Funk Brothers. And apparently when he was young, I didn't know this until his funeral, actually, he had done like backup for Chuck Berry back in the day. So,
Okay.
he was in a lot of like dive bars between, here in Ohio, and he actually was a music critic at the Metro Times as well for a little bit. So getting to know that more, I think was really formative in like my decision to come move here. And I remember, coming down for like a typical kind of visitor weekend where you go to like Eastern Market and then you go down to Hart Plaza, and feeling like just the weight of like kind of what you were talking about earlier, like the size of the city, but also like the weight of the history here and when you're driving down Woodward from the suburbs and you see those kinds of like the donuts of nicer area, disinvested area, nicer area, disinvest, and you see how intentional like the planning decision is around that, where you're moving from community to community all the way in, it was really overwhelming. And it was like, yeah, I don't know. It was just like very heavy feeling that this was like a place that was like so much beyond like me as like an individual, like trying to come in here, like almost that I could like never wrap my arms around it.
Mm-hmm.
And my relationship with the city has definitely changed over time.
Oh, I mean, I think me being a lifelong Detroiter, I can the event we were at this past weekend, like I always say, it's like a lot of what is spoken about as far as some of the things that I think are not as progressive and constructive, that's here. You can find that. But it's a whole lot of things that are constructive and very progressive and balanced here too. And this isn't just a Detroit thing. I think America's like that. Like you can get into a lot of ill works. If that's something that you're interested in, you can find it. You can definitely find it. But it's also a lot of things that that people pour into and have a lot of love for. And depending upon who you are and how you move and where your intentions lie, you're going to be driven in that. One of the toughest things that I think it is tough, especially being in the neighborhood that I'm from, my neighborhood, as it shifts, but it's still grounded where it is sometimes your associations and where they go can connect you to something you don't even want to be connected with. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be something like explicitly what I think is like physically or mentally harmful, but it could just be like more emotionally draining, just depending upon like where you're at, especially especially like when we're thinking of some of the things that do present themselves. If you are a person that and shout out to everyone that is putting in that work and being there for those people, like at COTS and things like that. But those realities exist, and not just in Detroit, but many places. But if you're there and you're emotionally and spiritually balanced for something like that, wonderful and beautiful. If you're not really ready to see the dire situations of so many people, it can be heavy. And that does exist here, like many other cities in America, and the solutions for like how to solve that, as Detroit's looking for answers. I mean, if you go to California, they're looking for answers. You go to DC, you go to New York, you look at many places, like it can be heavy. So I would say the work that you do, and even like that we do together, I will hope that this gives some ideas to people, kind of knows how to navigate some things, opens up the lens a little bit for the person that doesn't necessarily have the time to stay as focused on what's happening politically, and can create something that's constructive. But
yeah, I don't think I was like hesitant to come, even, we're talking about like being fed kind of a negative image of the city. Like, I don't think that really turned me off, probably just from my experience of like going around. I wanted to see it myself. I wanted to see what it was really about.
Yeah.
And make up kind of my own mind about it. And man, I'm just like really, I mean, frankly, it's honoring to just be able to be a reporter here. And the fact that, people have been so cool to me has been really cool. But yeah, it's like the layers and layers that you continue, at least in kind of like my Detroit journey, like continuing to kind of unravel why things are the way that they are. Detroit is different, right? But it is like there's a lot of things that happen here that happen, all over the world. And, it's kind of a place that's very unique, certainly, but like also like a lot of other places at the same time. Like there's nothing like, I don't know, it's like a normal place at the same time, right?
Yeah. And it's, I think like I always say, it's the cliquishness of Detroit that makes it, like, we as Detroiters make it different. Like, it's not many cities where, people will be 60 years old and be like, what high school you go to? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, why would that matter? It matters like ever here. Because like if you went to Persian and you graduated in the 80s, it's like I should be able to call up Malcolm and be like, hey, and it shouldn't, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't make sense like that, but it does. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that, like the neighborhoods. It's a culture that all connects, and even with that kind of leads me into like when we first. Well, actually, even before we get to like meeting you in BridgeDetroit, M Live and like that Lansing beat. What was it like? The State House. That is something that many people, I think, should pay a lot more attention to, because it really impacts a whole lot of the local politics of wherever you are in the state of Michigan. But what was that state beat like? I know you were covering that in Lansing. How did it feel? How were you navigating kind of that space when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was pretty uncomfortable when I first got in the legislature, and I didn't really do a lot of like covering I didn't cover the House or the Senate. I wasn't really on the floor much. I was covering more of like the federal perspective, and then would kind of tap in with people on hearings, and I don't know. I did cover like some legislative issues, especially when you're at the local level, because there is like that direct kind of connection to what's going on in the State House. But I don't know. I mean, being from, I don't know, like not being a rich kid, I guess, made me feel a little uncomfortable, because like some of the people that you're around, it's kind of a different world, like the blue blood type of thing, where it's like this guy's dad was also a state lawmaker, or this staffer, has this like history, and the kind of the pipelines of like MSU into the legislature, and in that kind of professional world, I felt pretty alienated by that. My dad, again, was like in the military, didn't have anybody that's worked in public service. Well, I guess that's a kind of public service, but nobody that's ever had like
a political position.
Yeah, political job. We weren't a political
family
connected to anybody. My mom like worked as a public school teacher like later on when we started to grow up more, but she never like went to Lansing to like rally for union teachers or anything like that. And so I just felt like very on the outside of that again. And I probably like that's probably coming more from like a place of like my own
understanding
anxiety,
of where things were going at that time, too,
as opposed to being like made to feel unwelcome. But it felt like kind of an inhospitable place, and like kind of tough to crack into, just because of the types of people. Like I didn't really identify really with the types of people that were there, I guess, if that makes sense.
So as you made got the phone call, because BridgeDetroit, which you work for Bridge, and Bridge is a project that comes to life really to add more journalism in Detroit for what that footprint is, on top of like kind of like connected to Outlier Media. Some of the connection that always was really the ground to me was, shout out to Catherine Kelly, Michigan citizen, and other minds come together. It's like, okay, we need something else to really cover a lot of the beats here. You step into that role, and then shout out to Bryce too. And what was it about the concept of BridgeDetroit that you were like, I want to check this out?
Yeah, it was really a breath of fresh air. So after the 2020 election, and covering the pandemic, because everybody who was reporting in Michigan basically became a health reporter for a good 6 to 10 months of that, at least that first year, and and beyond. I decided, actually, me and my wife decided to move down here while I was still working at M Live. And my last kind of beat responsibility there was covering like some of the social movements that were happening and some of the political extremism that had spun out of that election and the pandemic
And that made more sense to be here, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there was just more going on. I mean, we did stories about, some of the gun sales that were happening. Like Michigan had historic numbers of guns that were sold, and so we covered some like black gun owner groups who were worried about, Charlottesville type things happening. And so that was kind of part of the reason that we were seeing more spikes in gun sales in Wayne County. I mean, everybody was buying guns because they were afraid of their neighbors, basically. And we did some other stories about tracking the kind of anti-lockdown movement throughout the state. When restaurants were being closed and people were saying, screw you, come find me. I'm going to keep my restaurant open. I'm going to keep cutting people's hair, all of those kind of conflicts. A lot of the actors in that, went on to become political agents who are, some of them are serving in the legislature. Some of them ran for governor and other offices. And then that kind of spun into like, what is Michigan's connection to the January 6th riot? We had a lot of folks from Michigan that were present there. There were buses that were organized that took people down.
Right.
So all of that was like building to a head. And it just felt like I was not really making much of an impact on anything. It felt like we were kind of chronicling this insane time, which is important, right, to document things. But it felt like I was really disconnected from like regular people, not because like the people that I were covering like weren't regular people. Like they're, unfortunately this kind of extremism that we're still going through affects everybody. But the stuff that I was writing about didn't feel like it was really connected to like a community, or it just felt like we were, I don't know, like writing to the most like deranged situations that we were like living through. And so I was looking for a break. And that was kind of a time too where I was like going into that election. Part of the idea maybe was like to use that to elevate myself somewhere else. I didn't know if maybe I wanted to leave Michigan, but I knew I didn't want to live in Lansing anymore. That was before we decided to move to Detroit. Okay. But I had kind of decided, no, I do want to stay here. I don't want to like use this to go to DC or anything. Like I think I would have been even more miserable about feeling part of this like machine that would grind on, and not really like help people if I had done that. So decided to stay here, moved to Detroit. We're covering some of these social movements. And I just really wanted to get back to local reporting. I mean, that's kind of what I started out doing. I was like a local government reporter going to city council meetings and board meetings, and oftentimes being the only person in the room, from the media, and bringing stuff to light that people really needed to know, and feeling more like it was a service. And BridgeDetroit was pretty early in its organization. Like I think it was founded in 2020. So by the time I came around, this was like spring of 2022. So had just really got off the ground. They had hired Christine Ferretti from the Detroit News, who I had met a couple times on assignments down here, and who I had really respected and wanted to work with, and got to meet Catherine Kelly, and immediately was like, oh my God, this is like the coolest person in the world. She has this like history of independent, like agitative, Black-owned newspapers, and Michigan Citizen, and that whole history is really interesting. And being kind of based in Benton Harbor as well, felt kind of connected to being from the west side of the state. And Bryce Huffman, I remember, so Bryce is our community engagement editor at the time. He was our reporter who was covering the Board of Police Commissioners, and was outside Cobo Hall when the whole Stop the Steal stuff was going on, which I was covering for MLive, but I wasn't actually on the ground that day outside the convention center. But we went to college together. Actually, we were in if there was like an origin story of me and Bryce, we were in the same journalism 102 class together, like a very first journalism class. We were in the room. And so when I moved here, I kind of reconnected with him, and I asked him to go out to a bar one day, and was just kind of like, hey man, there's this job opening at BridgeDetroit. You work there. I think it's really cool what you guys do, but like, does it make sense like for me to be there?
Apply.
And I had some anxiety of like being not from here, and like, how do I kind of handle myself? And like, does this make sense? Am I going to like take an opportunity I specifically was like, Bryce, am I going to take it up? Is this like me taking away an opportunity for somebody? And he was like, just be yourself and don't try to pretend like you're something you're not, and apply and see what happens. And they were very generous to give me a foothold into reporting on the city. And they wanted someone who could cover the city council. This was, I guess, a year after the last municipal race. So the council, was kind of early in its business. And that was where I thought, okay, I've got the skills for this, or at least the experience of covering this body. And nobody really seems to be paying that close attention to it. No. So it makes sense as kind of a niche where I can do some good. And then it was, it's been like 4 years now.
Yeah, man. And I think also we go through we're canvassing for the Tell Us Detroit series. We like canvas through communities a lot together. So like we're walking through East Side, West Side,
That was that first summer, I think.
Yeah, man.
And that was incredible for me too, because it was a really great way to get to know the city.
Yep.
And also just a reminder of like how distinct different parts of the city are from each other. Like you could I really, learned that summer of going around, and we had those meetings, in people's backyards and out here at, in your garden, and got to meet a lot of people. And yeah, that was huge. And being able to hear like directly from people. I'd never worked in a newsroom like that before, where people were asked what did they want to know about. And I don't know, like the experience of seeing people, like build more trust in media at a time where trust in media was really on the downswing. And I was kind of even like, we're getting our butts kicked in terms of like people trusting, and for good reason too. Like I get it, right? Like broadcast tradition, or not broadcast, but like corporate media has done a terrible job of really covering stories that are real and matter. As well as like letting people down constantly, and it's still going on and probably getting worse, honestly, at that level than ever before.
Let me I've said this so many times, and I'll continue saying it. Like, I'll be 43 next week, and I remember. So it's like, yeah, that definitely makes me old, but but I remember this ain't so long ago. Like in one of the first assignments I had, like in first grade, was you read a newspaper, like you could pick any article, who, what, when, where, is happening in this story. And this is, so I mean, I'm, at 6, this is like, 1988, you know what I'm saying? 1989. So I'm able to do that then. Like, whereas now, in based on what I do, like content creation, along with the money being made in like, it's like news media, has really transitioned a lot of things more into what we would consider like editorializing. So
and entertainment even too.
Yeah, and like, so like back then, that whole, the Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings, and I forget the other guy, but like their like almost like stoic nature of like not having any emotions was the way that it's like, okay, I can trust them because it doesn't even seem like they could care. And I've watched in my lifetime like the shifts of like even like what came in waves of like talk radio, and then becoming, like you say, it's like more entertaining. And definitely I'm like not a fan of them, but I remember the Rush Limbaughs and Don Imus and like the arcs of how those things happen. And then like obviously like in black talk radio, we're looking at like the John Arnolds, Tom Pope, shout out to Tom Pope, and many others. So like it now, like, news becomes something different. And I actually think it was like one particular moment that really crystallized that. And that was for me at least, it was the O.J. Simpson trial. So like that was some of the most watched television, as this is a news story, but then it started shifting into entertainment in a whole nother sphere. And since then, many other iterations. And I'm sure like some, college professor on like media and tabloids would be able to arc more things, but I'm just in my lifetime. So now when I grab any news, it's so hard to really determine. It's like what, when, where, and who. It becomes like like something where it's like, okay, I have to kind of go through like 4 outlets just to figure out like, okay, what's kind of happening here and how is it happening here, and how is this being even presented to me, and building that trust back it becomes very difficult because, yeah, like what you said too, it's depending upon what part of the internet you search for your entertainment, is certain stories you'll just never see.
Yeah.
And and is that is um, it's a reality that I didn't think that would present itself, and hence that's why I try to keep Detroit is different with these stories, and try to be like just not feeding the sensationalism that I think a lot of people want, and it will get you a lot of views, but it comes at the cost of, I think, you know, diluting the substance of what is being offered.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I was working at MLive, we were getting, millions of views on some of those stories. I mean, we were getting national reach. I mean, I was getting a lot of attention for the stuff that we were writing about.
Yeah.
But I decided that that's less important than
Yeah.
giving people like quality information. But like the information environment we're in now is broken, to put it lightly. I've had the same experience you're talking about where like over my lifetime, I feel like we've like slipped into this collective psychosis. And part of the issue is like media is so fragmented now,
Mhm.
and it's so sensationalized and like outrage driven in particular.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that is the social media companies that we've just let run all over us. Not only as journalism industry. I remember when I was in school, the big conversation was like, you got to be on Facebook, you got to get your stuff on Facebook, because Facebook basically stole all of the ad revenue from newspapers. We basically gave away all of our content for free, not realizing what that was going to do long term. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, it was like newspapers were making so much money, they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And now it's there's like very few of us. We're like in these news deserts now, and it's very difficult to get funding, and we're having to ask people to pay for it again, and folks are not used to that, and some of them can't, and thankfully, BridgeDetroit is it doesn't have any paywalls, and it's nonprofit, and we're supported by some foundations and donations of people, but it's hard to get good information because it takes investment. It costs money to do, and the crap doesn't, and the crap is what gets prioritized. And social media companies now are going fully into AI. And I think it's going to make it even more difficult for us to have any kind of set of shared facts. And this stuff really bothers me. I mean, it keeps me up at night. I've, basically dedicated my life to this. I could have sold out and done anything else a long time ago. I could be a lot happier.
You were right there. I mean, you could have wrote a book on like, and it's like 2 stories you can write about like, the men that try to kidnap and kill Gretchen Whitmer. You know what I'm saying? Like it's 2 articles. You can write one that a person that got the MAGA hat loves, or you can write one that the person that sees that hat and want them to see him die, or hates that hat. You know what I'm saying? Like where it's like, okay, like let's step back. Like let's apply some critical thinking here. You know what I'm saying? Like let's ground ourselves in some critical thought about all of these things that are coming at us, and not just like heighten things. And that's why I guess it's definitely been moments and times where people even ask me like opinions, and they're like, oh, we think this or we think that. And I'm like, nah, you're assuming that that's what I think. But some of this stuff I'm still just processing. Like I'm still processing a whole lot of just even what's being shared in when we think of like local politics. I think one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people are like, oh, you don't like Mayor Duggan. And it's like, that's not the analysis that I have. I think that it's certain things that happen, and it's like any political administration, that I just don't think necessarily that the attention that was paid to certain things that shifted during that administration needs to pay attention. But it's not like a like or dislike. You know what I'm saying? This isn't it's not a football team. You know what I mean? This is like politics.
And it's our job to make people a little uncomfortable with realities that they may not want to accept, and things that are maybe unpopular to hear, but are correct, unfortunately. And that, I think there's a difference between doing that and getting people outraged, right? I don't think that's the same thing.
Yeah. And it definitely is in this space where, where, also like in this sensationalism, you'll have what I think is a more reputable source, or someone that you usually trust, share something that you know, you don't necessarily agree with all the time, and then people be like, "See, that's why you can't trust them either." And it's like we have to have some form of like a place and space where we can look at some information, apply some critical thinking, but also like have a little bit of trust in what it is and what was. Like
Yeah.
everything cannot necessarily. I do think that it's good to have that critical thinking, but you gotta have some basis of like we can move forward. You know what I'm saying? I can't like right now. It's like if they say it's going to be a 2-foot snowstorm tomorrow, and like let's just say it's like 1 foot. I mean, I'm not gonna never listen to that meteorologist again. I'm gonna be like, okay, this is where I want to go to get some of the information. And as you say, yeah, as it turns into entertainment, it, just sometimes I just wish it could synthesize a whole lot more. And especially when it comes to what's happening in AI, as like the narratives that are being perpetuated and how they're perpetuated, even with like the headlines, what'll get more views and how it gets more views. It's real interesting because a lot of this stuff I don't think is and I don't know if you had the same look. Like a lot of this stuff is not as incendiary at one point in time where I used to think like more like along the lines of like a conspiracy. It's not like that as much as it's just more steps that are just needed in everything that happens. Like here's the classic example that I always use is trash on the street. I've said this many a times. And it's like, look, I think a lot of people would throw garbage away in the garbage cans if there were more garbage cans available on the street. But to do that, now we have to create the service in which you can collect all the trash and make sure you dispose of that trash. Who's gonna monitor that? How can you get that? And it's like, I think that some communities could be like, okay, I'll take the garbage this week and then the other person takes it next week. Like you can build systems where it can happen. All of these processes and systems start taking on a weight of its own. Hence, that's why we have government agencies to sit in this space. But it's less resources that are available to execute certain things for more things that are needed. And that's where you get the trash that sometimes exists in my community. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, so government power is derived from the consent of the governed, right? And can you consent if you're not informed? Like, can you truly offer consent, which is the basis by which we organize collectively? Like, sorry, whether you like it or not, government is a collective, effort of resources to direct, to do things, to solve problems, to provide services. And I just feel like I've watched in my lifetime, like the most powerful people in this country win a battle of trying to misinform people and break down the kind of established networks of information, leaving people more confused and paranoid and uninformed than they ever have been. And look, there is a really real conversation about media bias that we need to be constantly having.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in school, it was always like, don't make yourself a focus of the story. You know, don't include your bias. Try to be as objective. I mean, objectivity as if it was a real attainable standard. And I think we've seen that rightfully break down. It's ridiculous to say that there's no, unconscious bias in any of what we're doing because we're making choices. We're making choices about what stories to cover, who to talk to for that story, who best represents what's happening here. These are all decisions that are being made. So why are those decisions? Well, it's a collection of different reasons. And sometimes I think it's always fair to ask and hold me accountable and hold other reporters accountable for like, why are you making the choices that you're making and the things that you're covering? But it's also like inevitable as being a human being that there's some subjectivity baked into that. And I think the correct answer to this that we've seen become more popular is people embracing and being transparent about their biases and the things that have informed and shaped them as a person. And I think if you follow me, on social media, if you read my reporting, you probably have a good sense about how I feel about certain things, but I'm not a partisan actor. Like I'm not here to support one side or the other. Right. And, I try to mitigate those biases as much as I can in pursuit of, of the truth and intellectual curiosity and not let things that are maybe inconvenient. I think you have to be like ideologically kind of malleable as a reporter and maybe just as a person in this world. I mean, doing this job has made me a better, well-rounded person just by nature of like stuff that I thought was true turned out to be wrong. And what do you do with that? You're going to dig your heels in and continue to be stubbornly wrong? That's stupid. That's what a stupid person does, you know? You have to be willing to adapt and integrate like new information. And so by doing this work, I think that's helped me along that route. But like the rise of the news influencer really freaks me out because there's a lot of people who are totally unqualified to be interpreting what's going on, don't have any kind of qualifications, but because they can produce a video that looks good or they're attractive or they have a good speaking voice or something, you know, they get attention or they provoke people in the right way. And we've seen this with like the debate bros and the, you know, the streaming people and all of this. I mean, these people have become very, very influential. And yeah, I think it's been bad. I think it's bad for everyone. Another thing I just want to I don't think people realize this, but like, I think what we're doing is like patriotic to some degree. Like I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't care about the country. Like the idea that like journalists are enemies of the people, enemies of the state, that we are trying to undermine America. Like at least what I hope I'm doing is further strengthening democracy in Detroit by equipping people with good information that they can use however they want. I'm not an activist, right? I don't advocate for particular causes or anything like that. But hopefully people that, you know, do want to advocate for themselves and their communities can use the information that we give them to make better decisions. And ultimately what we're in pursuit of is better governance. And I think that's hopefully something that I've been able to add by being in Detroit is like the level of rigor that I've applied in my career to people in Congress or people, you know, running for these higher level offices in the state legislature. Apply that to the local level because we deserve a well-functioning government. We deserve people who are serious about the responsibility that they have. You know, I don't have a lot of like journalistic heroes necessarily, but you know, Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. And if there's one like maybe mantra to live by, I think that might be it. Like if you have any kind of power in this world, you have a responsibility to use it well.
I think even with everything you share, like, part of it is like, how do I put this? We should expect that the actors would move in this way, but it's back to also where we stand in society, even for like you know, just attention spans, period. And some of this is like how much is programmed, how much is choice, right? Because that's really going to be the next debate that a person would say. It's like, well, these people get this many views, but and in that, as you say, like this is to empower. Whereas I feel like I'm figuring out and learning a lot of stuff as I go and grow through this. Definitely, I think that, you know, and that's why I always say I'm not a journalist. Like when sometimes people say that I'm creating content, but I'm telling a lot of stories that I think do come into play. But I do think that this is a place and space where I want a lot of people to share their stories so that you can have the opportunity to get these relationships through the archives. I mean, I'm over 500 episodes of like this arc of people's Detroit stories.
There's value to that too. I mean, I think a healthy news ecosystem has room for all of these different kinds of ways to engage with it. You look at like the newspaper archive of coverage of, you know, the mayoral race in like the early 2000s. And there's like 7 pages of coverage. Some of it's editorial content, some of it's columns. There's several different stories by different reporters. You know, we just don't have that anymore.
No. And even like the arcs of like, I collect old magazines because it's like the arcs of like having an understanding of how, you know, how at least journalism presented something at a time. Because I think a lot of the sensationalism is kind of like at a pulse of where we stand in this time too. And the difficulty that I see with a lot of this is really that it has heightened, like definitely at one point in time, I think that too many people probably trusted the news too much. And now it's like the extreme opposite. You're supposed to be somewhere in the middle with this.
Yeah. There's room for nuance there. Cause I'm very sympathetic to how media has failed to cover things correctly in this country, and the decisions that are made and some of it is like the pipelines into journalism and the elite media, and like media in New York and DC, and the types of people that get elevated into those roles. And, lack of diversity in journalism has definitely been a problem that contributes to all of that stuff too. So like, yeah, we probably did like trust too much that there was no like bias affecting the content, but now it's kind of gone in the opposite direction.
The extreme opposite way. And then even within that arc, like even the American story itself, like, it depends on like from what, you know what I'm saying? It's like history, you know what I'm saying? It's his story, you know what I'm saying? Whoever tells it. And I think especially what Bridge has offered to Detroit right now, when it comes to the city council beat, first off, I tip my hat to you because, sometimes city council, I mean, a Tuesday session can go, sometimes that can be like 8 hours, you know what I'm saying? And like, who's there more consistently than you? I don't know them. You know what I'm saying? And then coming back with the beat of what's happening day to day, because a lot of these ordinances, they where they start and where they end, what they end up coupled into and how it functions. Like this is the weeds. And sometimes like a person will say one thing and it's a semblance of truth in there, but like you need the like whole scope to understand something. Like here's a classic one, like when people say like, hey, should we get rid of the land bank? It's like, that's definitely a Detroit discussion. That's going to be a discussion in 2026, but I don't even necessarily know if that question being presented like that is even something to like take in without so many of these other factors that play a role into why that's a question in the first place. And if the solution to what better serves residents is something that is more nuanced, we need to be understanding of where that nuance stands. I really applaud it, and I still tip my hat. I still need to get her in here and talk about it. But like where we have a commission for tenants, the tenants commission, the renters commission, and what happened with Mary Waters. Now, from knowing a couple people on the commission and them sharing where things go and what needs to happen and everything, it's like, okay, more growth is going to be needed in how things function there. But that's a great first step when we think of the transitions in this city of now you got about 50% renters and owners. But at one point in time, this was a large majority of homeowners in the city. So a lot of people that were tenants was like, man, the laws here is messed up. So some of this, we just need the understanding and the nuance. And that's another thing in this time of sensationalism. Nobody wants to, or shouldn't say nobody, but it's very risky even to admit anything of ignorance or admit fault. And when you don't have the space and place of the humanity to say, okay, I was ignorant to this or this was wrong and let's correct it, we're naturally creating a word that I think, I always knew this when I was younger, but I could definitely say over the past 5 years, it may be one of the most overused words ever, but narcissism begins to present itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're kind of in a narcissist culture right now. I mean, we're pretty like divorced from context in our history too. And I worry about the younger generations who are coming up in this environment. I mean, being a millennial kind of had like the best of both worlds of like pre-technology and then kind of getting the better version of a lot of this technology. Some of the social media stuff seems really like quaint back then. But yeah, I feel like a lot of what I'm trying to do is like just make this information more accessible to people. Government reporting has so much jargon and like technical terms and processes, all of which have been made up by people. So there's no like inherent platonic ideal of how a bill is supposed to become law. Like we've created processes around this stuff for political reasons in a lot of cases that, don't necessarily mean they're the best way to do things. But I see kind of my job is to like sit in the weeds and then report up to folks who are not, able to spend that much, they can't spend 8 hours in a city council meeting on a Tuesday, right?
You got that right, my brother.
And instead of saying, look at how smart I am, I've read this 1,000-page document and I've, here are all the terms that my job is just to be like,
synthesize.
If I were to run into you on the street at a coffee shop or something like that, or you're my friend, like, here's how I would describe it to you so that you have an understanding of it, in kind of the simplest terms. And that's really hard. And you're probably, people who read my work are probably like, yeah, you use $5 words all the time. You're probably trying to sound real clever.
Hilarious.
It probably happens. Sorry.
No, I don't.
But I really so. Our job is to meet people where they're at. And now is things are changing and people are not reading as much. There's probably a knee-jerk reaction from folks to scold the audience and be like, what is wrong with Americans? They don't want to read anymore. I don't think that's very helpful. I think that means we need to do video. I think that means we need to package things in ways that people understand. We need to get familiar with short form. Yeah, we need to connect with our audience. We can't be above our audience. That's a huge problem that the media industry in our country has had for a long time, is they see themselves as above, the people that they're recording. They're not embedded in community. They don't have a personal stake in what's happening because they're more financially protected from the consequences of things. And that's what I appreciate about BridgeDetroit is we were set up to be, reporters who live in the city. I bought a house here. My first house is, in Detroit. Nobody can ever take that away from me. The first house I ever bought was in Detroit. That means a lot. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with all that.
I was definitely gonna ask, just even following up on the point that I had in that, do you think, do you understand, just with what I shared, knowing the risk of admitting fault or admitting ignorance is right now.
Yeah. Well, it's hard
how do you, you know what I'm saying? How first, what type of consideration do you think, let's just say as a citizen, I ain't even saying as a journalist, what consideration should we as citizens even have for that to exist in people in leadership positions?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to remain intellectually curious, which is to say, be open to new information that challenges the things that you thought were true. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting when there was this debate over the 1619 project and changing school curriculums. Because, you would read People's History of the United States and none of that stuff is in the textbooks that were taught, right? People are already being taught an alternative view of American history that caters to certain political projects and ideas, right? So there's kind of a re-education that needs to even just happen for older generation. I mean, imagine what was in the boomers textbooks, right? There's literally stuff in sitting senators' textbooks. I think it was Vice. Somebody did a really interesting story a couple of years ago that lawmakers that were voting against or voting for book bans, they looked at what was in the high school textbooks of those, sitting senators. And it was this, oh, actually people enjoyed being slaves, crazy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it is there's definitely who benefits from keeping your view of history rigid around certain traditional ideas of, black and white, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, morality stuff, right? Unfortunately, the founding fathers, did set up a country that was meant to benefit, white male slave owners and property owners. I think you can say that without being anti-American, or I don't even think that's really that controversial, right? If you love this country and you are dedicated to the project of it, which is to be the first multicultural democracy, then you have to acknowledge the bad stuff that's happening. Yeah. But me personally, I go into kind of everything that I write about with the perspective of I have some kind of hypotheses about this thing, but I don't really know. And you find out through the process. And I think that's kind of the problem with our, lack of or declining media literacy is it's harder for them to seek out information, and people don't have that skill set of you used to have to go to the library and find a book and find another book and cross-reference. And now it's you just Google something and AI spits out an answer that's been generated from skimming a bunch of articles and stealing reporting, honestly, from people. Yeah. And I worry about that, the process of figuring things out is almost as important as like knowing it or not, because if you're are wrong, you could have that skill to figure. I mean, one of my professors at CMU used to say that journalists know everything, or at least how to find it out. Right? Emphasis on the last part. We don't know everything. We don't know much of anything. I feel like I don't know really much about anything, but I know how to figure things out, and like that's important. So yeah, I don't know. Me personally, like I'm willing to admit, I don't know a lot of things, and I think the difference between it is like, do you want to remain ignorant, or do you want to, pursue this journey and it's a lifelong journey, and the things that I, think are true now probably are going to change with new information.
It changes with the information, who it impacts, as you see certain other things, like as they present themselves, like it always shifts. Lord knows. I mean, I was talking shout out to Jerry of Daily Detroit. I was talking to him about the train station project, Michigan Central, and like what I was saying, and he presented more information, and I was like, okay, I didn't know that. Okay, it's like, all right, I gotta stop saying that, because clearly see something else that is different about what the occupancy is and where things stand with that project, and what's going to be from the hotel of that project, and how it was invested in, and what it looks like. So it's like, okay, I can get that. You know what I'm saying? So
much of this work too is trying to balance different, because who benefits is always the big question, right?
Yeah.
And for example, on the land bank, right? I mean, you have to keep a couple things in your head at the same time. Like, there's valid criticisms that people have. There's things that they've done that's good. Where do we kind of find not the middle ground, but like a holistic view on something where both are true, right? The things that people have experienced that are negative happened, and things that are good have happened. And, you present that in a package, hopefully that provides the right context and balance, and then readers can kind of decide. I mean, so much of what I feel like I'm doing is just like navigating different points of view on things and trying to find the best way to like represent it without
represent it all. And what I'm always usually uplifting is back to capacity, because that's been in this American story, at least where my lens looks at a lot of the things here, is the capacity for, and it's rare because I'm not as big of the person debating the whole concept of what capitalism is as many others, but the concept of always moving forward with what productivity can be, and that being quote unquote what the solution is, it supersedes the concept of the capacity of how things can happen. And I don't usually think that that's taken into effect as much as it should be, because there are limits to a lot of this stuff. Hence, some of the realities we're looking at as post-industrial America. I mean, Roger and Me is a documentary because of a lot of that stuff about capacity and where things get in the competition of where capitalism lies. So we have to be cognizant of that. And a lot of the ways of the presentations of like just what the solution is like, everybody gets a free pizza, everybody gets a house, everybody can get their favorite new car. And I'm not necessarily saying the whole, there will be poor, like what the Bible says either, but we just need to be cognizant of what that capacity looks like. If we're building new office buildings downtown for office tenants, are the businesses, was there a demand of these many businesses saying, I want to come to Detroit to have an office? Because if that's not there, but this is there, then we're gonna have some challenges.
I think it's it's okay to not have an opinion on everything. Like, I think social media has like promoted this a lot, where everybody has to have like a take, and your take has to be the morally superior one. And if you're not, you're getting clowned on, and surveillance culture has made this so much worse too, where like people aren't able to make mistakes anymore. And if they, they come out on the wrong side of something, and there's limits to this. Some people deserve to get clowned on.
Right? As fresh as we get to a close, like it's like everybody's calling for a new head coach for the Detroit Lions. because of a game
Oh
last
my God.
night.
Well, you got robbed on that touchdown. Like, that was crazy. I've never seen anything. You guys get robbed every week on some call. I'm like, they're just inventing new rules by the week. New York's calling in, man. It's nuts.
Hey, you know, it happens. It's like I told him, you know, but that's, you know, that's what it's like nowadays. So classic Detroit is different questions as we get to a end of this. Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
I had a 1991 Ford Ranger.
Wow.
Man, that was a cool car. I totaled it. I was driving to wrestling practice in the morning in high school. It was like the first winter. My birthday's in September, so got my car, that first winter, didn't know what I was doing. Probably should have put some sandbags, in the back of the truck.
Oh, man.
People didn't plow the roads where we were at, though, and I'm driving into school at like 6 a.m. to do wrestling practice, and I rolled off the road and destroyed it, and then I had to drive a Honda Odyssey van.
I guess the
my
good
mom's van the rest of high school, so I paid for that one.
I guess the good thing though is that you were safe after that.
I was. Thank you, Ford Engineering, because I drove it into the woods and rolled over, and I was fine. I've been in a couple of car accidents. When I was younger, I thought I was like
the guy, like
Achilles,
Bruce Willis and what you call it?
like Achilles can only get killed if you hit him in the ankle. I was like, I can't be killed in a car. It's impossible. Wow. Yeah. And now I'm on the other end. When I drive in Michigan winters, I'm like 94 has got my name. I'm gonna be one of those little. Never mind. I'm not gonna say that. Anyway, yeah, Ford kept me safe, so I appreciate that. I drive a Subaru now, so sorry, okay. I'm not. I don't have a domestic vehicle, but I had a bad experience with a Chevy, and I was kind of like, I'm gonna get something different this time around. So.
Okay, all right. So man, it didn't even really last that long, but it was cool for them couple months.
Yeah, it was awesome. Used to drive my friends around, pick up girls and drive around the truck. Had cab in the back. It was cool.
Cool. All right. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks, Woodward and Jefferson, Detroit. What 2 songs you playing?
Oh, damn. That's tough. I love that Detroit, that Frank Sinatra song. I feel like that's a classy way to kind of close out a fireworks night. Damn. We Are the Champions also is kind of I feel like that's a fun one just to like, everybody's going to their car, but those aren't like DJ songs really.
Okay. And people pick. Yeah, I think
You're putting me on the spot. Every time people ask me like what I listen to, I have to like go into my Spotify and look at stuff because I listen to like a lot of just
whatever
random stuff, and I'm not really good with remembering like artist names. So sorry about that.
Because I was gonna say Sinatra has a version like they all had like songs like that. I think the Sammy Davis one is the one that is more popular, but Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sinatra, and Sammy, they kind of all.
Did Sammy Davis write that one?
I have no idea. I mean,
somebody told me that Sinatra did. That's probably not even true.
So we'll
go with the Sammy Davis.
Back in the day, you never know back then who wrote a song or who didn't, depending upon the relationships with sometimes what they would call some of Sinatra's friends in the music industry.
A couple of wise guys.
Yeah, in the music industry, it's like I wrote that. It's like, hey. He wrote it. Who knew? But yeah, and then We Are the Champions. Oh man, you never go wrong with Freddie Mercury. I mean, man, it's like
it was funny because my dad's like a macho kind of guy. You can imagine, being a Marine.
Yep.
He really loved Queen.
Oh, I mean, but Queen is like when it comes to like making, like. Okay, it's like stadium music. They like I don't even know, was like were they thinking, and God knows who wrote those songs. I think it was Freddie and them.
There's probably a lot of people like that in the 80s that didn't realize like the queer undertones of the music that they were listening to.
Well, but I was just more so saying like they made a lot of like We Will Rock You, like like those catalog, like if you have one of those songs that like is always played at a sporting event, I assume that the publishing on that is, and they got a couple. Well, We Will Rock You.
He liked the Bee Gees too.
The Bee Gees 70s.
And we had a Goo Goo Dolls CD in our car that we would always use on road trips because we would drive, a lot. So that's funny.
The Goo Goo Dolls, so that's more like
it's like 90s
soft rock. Yeah. They had that man, Man, I'm forgetting that song. They had the I mean, yeah.
I grew up listening to like a lot of punk music. Like when I was in middle school and high school, I had a friend who was like really into like Anti-Flag and Bad Religion and stuff like that, and kind of got, Green Day was kind of like a pipeline into some of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say
and
Green Day is what I think of when I think of more modern punk. And actually, I mean, shout out to the White Stripes. They had some.
Yeah. It was a lot of like we had all of our needs met and we were like well taken care of and we're like going to good schools and we were like mad at everything for no reason. You know what I mean?
Like, my so-called life.
Yeah. The suburbia or something, but I don't know. There's not really suburbs in Battle Creek, I guess. I don't know.
It's just the other side of town.
Yeah.
So last question. This is always the person that's in Detroit, not from Detroit. Spaceship comes down, E.T. comes out, and he's like, take me to the most Detroit place that you can take me. Where are you and E.T. going?
Wow, most Detroit place. Sorry, this is going to reveal my ignorance probably. I remember one of the first places I went to was the Bead Museum.
And
Dabble. And that was awesome. That felt like a very Detroit thing that was like, you don't see something like that in other cities. So
wow. I love Dabble. Shout out Dabble. He should be on here. Love Dabbles and everything he's done. And it's like, yeah, that would definitely be just really I would want to see the aliens' response to Dabble, because Dabble's always so like cool. He'd be like, well, that one's from Ghana, that's from Uganda. And it's like, you're not tripping out that this is an alien? It's like, he needs to buy it just like you do.
That's the least interesting thing in there would be an alien, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about it. Most people pick Belle Isle, but you pick Dabbles, which I guess that's even more reason that I need to get Dabble in here. I've known them for a long time.
Yeah, they had that issue with they almost got closed down. I think it was last year, right?
Yeah, like the footprint. I know Bryce went over there and supported it, but like that, it's like a whole space. And actually, it was maybe like 6 years ago. It was a group of young people that went on a tour. Like it's a whole he tells the story of iron and its relationship to earth. And it's like, damn, this is like, I've known him most of my life. I went to Northwestern, so it's like right on the corner, and I've been buying beads from him for like 20 years. And then like he goes on this whole tour, and I was like, damn, I never knew all of the rest of this was like really like a whole installation. So it's a whole like campus.
Because it's kind of like a big public art park outside too. So there's like, you go inside and you look at the bead, and then there's also all this other stuff to look at. It's probably been 2 years since I've been over there. I need to go back.
Yeah.
You mentioned Belle Isle. I'm a big Belle Isle advocate too. I don't think people realize in Michigan what a gem that is, what a public resource. I mean, such an amenity. And I live on the east side because I wanted to be kind of close to Belle Isle on the river too. So
there you go.
I'm out there a lot. In the wintertime, I'm playing hockey out there. So shout out to the Ice Boys.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely more power to you all that are checking to make sure that is solid out there.
The whole system around.
Because I was going to say, I ain't no telling. But thank you, Malachi. And this was fun. We've been waiting on this one for a while. I definitely know that people got a little bit in the background, more of our perspectives, and we're gonna be doing the wrap up public comments soon too, and everything. But yeah, like I always say, thank you so much for offering everything you do offer, the perspectives of so many different Detroiters that reach out to you and add layers to a lot of the things in city council, because really, like, following that beat, like something may get introduced in March, and you gotta follow it, and it comes to life in June or something. Also, because the weird fiscal year of the city of Detroit that it seems like, that's all.
I'm just getting tired of thinking of everything we got to do next year. There's just not enough of us doing this work. Is just what I kind of keep returning to. I mean, I want there to be a healthier
relationship,
information ecosystem in the city, if I can describe it that way, right? Like I want there to be more publications. I want there to be more reporters. You don't need to go get a journalism degree even. I think that's one good thing about kind of the technology of where we're at now, is like it's more accessible than ever to launch to find an audience, to create a platform, right? And so, earlier I was kind of decrying like people not being like qualified to, but I think it's good for people to take an interest. I think the Detroit Documenters program is amazing that they're getting people to cover these meetings that I will never be able to go to, right? There's just too much going on. We need an all hands on deck approach. And so, I really appreciate you for not only having me on today and be a little bit more candid and open about myself than people are probably used to hearing me talk. I don't really, try to share much about myself out there to kind of preserve some
so people know
ambiguity and mystery. But you've done a lot to support our work and get it out to a platform and get it out to people who really need it. And I've learned a lot working with you too. And I don't know why you decided to trust me in the first place.
All day,
but
man.
It's cool that we have this relationship now. And it means a lot that I got to do this.
So. Yeah, and it actually started, like I say, it started back with the it started back when we were canvassing. It was like, okay, rocking with them. You know what I'm saying? Talking shit. Hot ass days, house to house to house. You know what I'm saying?
See me sweat through a polo on the first day we were out there. Yeah,
and it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Boots on the ground. Boots on the ground. That being said, peace.
Detroit is different. Detroit is different. Ooh, I can feel it. Detroit is different.